All right, everybody, here we go. Once again, Sean P. Greene Show, Bible Study Edition. We are in the book of Luke, and we're doing chapter 23. We're almost done with this series. We started December 1st. We're going all the way through until Christmas Eve, which would technically be tomorrow after this recording is posted. But that's it. Two more chapters left. The final stages of the crucifixion story of Jesus. Uh, we talk. We have a great review of the whole book of Luke. So I encourage you to go back, chapter one, go through each chapter. They're about anywhere between 35 minutes to 15 minutes, depends on the length of the chapter and how far I elaborate in the midst of it. But we're getting down to the end. This is chapter 23, December 23rd, 2023. We're releasing this video. So check us out, SeanPGreene.com. You can go and give if you want. You can donate because I do a lot of giving. I donate to a lot of things, a lot of people. And God has blessed me to be a giver. And if you'd like to participate in that, help support what I'm doing, and also get a piece of it. So God bless you. Let's just continue. Let's keep going forward. We're pressing on. We're going to Luke 23. Luke chapter 23. Here we go. All right. Jesus before Pilate. So Pontius Pilate was the governor at the time of Judea and overseeing things as part of the Roman Empire. He was a Roman ruler. He was not a Jew. Full-blown Italian. That is before they called themselves Italians. All right. Jesus before Pilate. You can reference this also in Matthew 27, verses 1 and 2, and also through 11 through 14. Also in Mark chapter 15, verse 1 through 5, and then John 18, 28 through 38. So they then led they Jesus from Caiaphas. Caiaphas was the leader of he was the high priest, unto the hall of judgment, and that's where he was presented to Pilate. So Caiaphas, the high priest. All right, here we go. Luke 23, verse 1. And the whole multitude of them arose, and led him unto Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, We found this perverting the nation. How twisted is that? And forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king. He's the Messiah, a king. And Pilate asked him, saying, Art thou the king of the Jews? And he answered and said, Thou sayest. He says, You're the one that's telling me I'm the king of the Jews. Then said Pilate to the chief priests and the people, I find no fault in this man. He's saying he's the king of the Jews, but it's not offending him at all. And they were the more fierce. So these people, the people that were trying to crucify Jesus, they were more fierce, saying, He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Jewry, beginning from Galilee to this place. When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked whether the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who himself also was at Jerusalem at the time. All right, so not to be confused, Herod was a leader in the northern part of former Israel, known as Galilee, or it's part of Syria as well, now part of the West Bank. And Pilate's jurisdiction was the southern part, or Judea, southern kingdom, what is now, the area where there was some fighting between Gaza Strip and Israel. All right, here we go. So he sent him to Herod so that Pilate didn't have to deal with him, is what he's trying to say. And Herod just happened to be in Jerusalem, so it worked out so he could just kind of ship him over there for a little bit. Now Jesus before Herod. When Herod saw Jesus, he was exceeding glad, for he was desirous to see him of a long, because he had heard many things of him, and he hoped to have seen some miracle done by him. Then he questioned with him in many words, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him. And Herod, with his men of war, set him at naught, and mocked, and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and sent him again to Pilate. So basically, they just keep sending them to each other. You know what I mean? So Jesus, you remember the first Herod during the time, King Herod, during when Jesus was born, they tried to kill all the children that were under 20 or under 2 years old, hoping that King Herod was going to kill Jesus and the king, the Son of God. He didn't know what was going on, so King Herod was trying to kill all the kids to prevent Jesus from happening. So this Herod, which is stated in the history books, a different Herod, had heard the reputation from probably his father, grandfather, whomever this was originally, who this Galilean was that was doing miracles, and he said, "Oh, I want to kill this guy too." No, he wanted to see a miracle happen to prove that if he was or wasn't this king that does miracles. But instead, didn't see it. Jesus wasn't going to do anything in his presence, and Herod sent him back to Pilate and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him again to Pilate. And the same day, Pilate and Herod were made friends together. So apparently there might have been a little controversy amongst them, but now they were buddies. For before they were at enmity between themselves. See, King Herod, king of the northern country, Pilate, the governor under the Roman Empire, they were at odds because basically they had two different systems of governing, two different jurisdictions. One was ruling a certain way, the other one was not that way. All right, we don't know all those details, but you can read more into it later. Pilate seeks Jesus' release. All right, so once again, next section, Matthew 27, Mark 15, John 18. All this account, 3 different accounts, 4 accounts total, but Luke was just paraphrasing Matthew and Mark's accounts. Luke 23:13. And Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said to them, Ye have brought this man unto me, as one that perverteth the people. And behold, I have examined before you, and have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof ye accuse him of. What you accusing him of? He's not perverting the people. That's what he's saying. Nor yet Herod. Herod's not finding any fault in him. Here we go. For I sent you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him. So he's just going to beat him and release. So there's fulfilling the prophecy by Isaiah. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. By his stripes we were healed. So they chastised him. For if necessity, he must release one unto them at the feast. So he was going to release Jesus. Because at the feast must have been a deal between the high priest and the Roman Empire, that during the feast or the Passover, they would pardon or release a guilty person. But there was no fault in Jesus, so the obvious person to release was Jesus. But they required somebody else. They required Barabbas, the thief. That's crazy. Here we go, verse 18. And they cried out all at once, saying, Away with this, and release unto us Barabbas. So set free this thief. For, verse 19, for a certain sedition made in the city for murder. He was a murderer, not just a thief. He was cast into prison for murder. Whoa. 20. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again to them. But they cried again, Crucify, crucify him. Not Barabbas, but Jesus. And he said unto them a third time, Why, what evil has he done? I found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let go. And they were instant with loud voices, and so even more irate, requiring that he must be crucified. And the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. And Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. So now Pilate is like, all right, fine. We're going to release the guy that killed people, or at least one person. And he released unto them him for sedition and murder. So there's two accounts that Barabbas was accounted for. Sedition and murder was cast into prison, for whom they had desired. But he delivered Jesus to their will. So they wanted to crucify Jesus instead. Simon bears the cross. So here's an interesting story. There's a story of people going around that Jesus carried his cross. So let's see what it says. Luke 23:26. Once again, Matthew 27, Mark 15, John 19, all referenced in there. All right, verse 26, Luke 23. And as they laid him away, they laid hold upon one Simon, a Cyrenian, coming out of the country, and on him they laid the cross, and that he may bear after Jesus. And there followed him a great company of people and women, which also bewailed and lamented him. But Jesus turned unto them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming, in which they that shall say, Blessed the barren, and the wombs that never bare, and the paps which never gave suck. So he's going to say this is like the same thing that happened in the beginning. Those that gave suck. Blessed are those wombs that never bear. So the ones that are barren, he's saying they're blessed. So they won't have to see some things. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. For they do these things in a green tree. What shall be done in the dry? They do this in prosperity. What should they do when they have no prosperity, basically? In soul, what are they going to do when it's dry? You know? Hmm. And there were also two older malefactors led with him to be put to death. So instead of Barabbas, there's two malefactors or prisoners that were led with Jesus to be put to death. So Simon the Cyrenian. Let's just look up this for a second. Who is Simon the Cyrenian? And where is Cyrenia? Don't know. Doesn't show us. So let's see where Cyrene is. Bear with me because we don't do this. We haven't done this in a couple chapters. So let's just check it out. It's a Greek city, eastern Libya, North Africa. All right, there's our answer. In eastern Libya, Jewish community, about 100,000 Judeans, Jews. All right, so we could say it's probably like Arab descent, maybe. All right, Arab descent, Cyrene in Libya, maybe Egyptian in nature. All right, now we go. Now we know. Could be very, very dark skin. Could be a off dark skin. Light skin. Who knows? The skin color is not relevant, but the relevance is where he was from. He's Libyan, according to today's rules here. All right, the crucifixion, verse 33. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, they crucified him, Jesus, and the malefactors, on the one on the right hand, one on the left. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiment and cast lots. And people stood beholding, and the rulers also with them derided, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he be Christ, the chosen of God. And the soldiers also mocked him, coming to him and offering him vinegar, and saying, If thou be a king of the Jews, save thyself. And a superscription was also written over him in letters of Greek and Latin and Hebrew. So they all had a piece of this. Greek scribes, Hebrew scribes, and Latin scribes. It says, This is the King of the Jews. All in three languages. It was not written in English. Verse 39. And one of the malefactors which was hanging railed on him, saying, If thou be Christ, save thyself and us. But the other answering rebuked him, saying, Dost not thou fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? He really had no remorse for his sin anyways. And we indeed justify, for we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this man hath done nothing amiss. So whatever was deemed crucifiable is what was done by these other two guys on the cross next to Jesus. And the one saying was saying justly were being crucified because of the laws. We disobeyed the laws of the land. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me. Well, let's say, and we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this man hath done nothing amiss. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise. I looked that up. Paradise, it means a park. It's like a place of rest. It's also referenced in as Eden, the Garden of Eden, where the tree of life is. To the Garden of Eden. And paradise is where the tree of life is, in God's presence. Pretty deep study. Verse 44. And it was about the sixth hour, or noontime. And there was a darkness over the earth until the ninth hour, which is 3 p.m. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst. And when Jesus had cried with a loud voice, he said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said thus, he gave up the ghost. Interesting. Jesus gave up his spirit to the Father. He gave his spirit to the hands of the Father. Gave up the ghost. He gave it up. Pneuma is the word for spirit or ghost. Verse 47. Now when the centurion saw what was done, he glorified God, saying, Certainly this was a righteous man. There is the centurion. There was the only centurion that's the centurion I could come up with, was the one that his servant was healed. And all the people that came together to that sight, beholding the things which were done, smote their breasts and returned. And all his acquaintance and the women that followed him from Galilee stood afar off, beholding these things. Women from Galilee. Who was amongst the women of Galilee? Well, I would say pre-adventure. Oh man, I would say Mary might have been amongst those people, of those women of Galilee. All right, stood afar off, beholding these things. In other words, witnessing all these things that was going on. All right, so Jesus has given up the ghost. Commended, it says it in different references, specific words in Aramaic. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? It is finished. These are all parts of the scripture that we can read later. Jesus is buried. Matthew 27, Mark 15, and John 19. All right, Luke 23:50. And behold, a man named Joseph, a counselor, a good man, and a just. The same had not consented to the counsel and the deed of them, of Arimathea. So Joseph of Arimathea is a just man. Arimathea is a city of the Jews, who also himself waited for the kingdom of God. This went unto Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. And he took it down off the cross and wrapped it in linen and, and laid it in a sepulchre or a tomb that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. So the Sabbath began in the evening. In the evening, the Sabbath drew on. So the Sabbath begins at sundown on Friday evenings. And the women also, which came with him from Galilee, followed after, and beheld the sepulchre, and how his body was laid. And they returned, prepared spices and ointments, and rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. So all this stuff was done before sundown, Friday, before the Sabbath. So that's the story of the crucifixion of Jesus in a nutshell. Does not have all the details in this one. Again, just go to Matthew and Mark and John for the big picture, the overall arch of the whole crucifixion. And I do recommend watching some movies to get a bigger understanding of all these occurrences. The Chosen is probably going to touch on it eventually. It's a series that, with some creative control, story about Jesus and the disciples. Eventually, they're going to have the crucifixion. But the Passion of the Christ, which is a little bit more Catholic in nature, theologically, as far as what occurred, but it's the most compelling, I would say, most accurate way to describe how the crucifixion, the crucifixion, hmm, the crucifixion. I think the Passion of the Christ did it really well. John Caviezel was a good actor. I think he portrayed Jesus very well, and I know he went through a lot during that season of his life too. There's a lot of backstory to that. John Caviezel is is a very interesting man, and you get to know his story as an actor and portraying Jesus. He got a lot of persecution even for doing that. So here we go. Jesus is now in a tomb. It's the Sabbath, and everybody's resting on the Sabbath day right now. So here we go. What's going to happen next? What's happening next? Many of you know this story, but today this was released the day before Christmas Eve, and tomorrow we're releasing the Christmas Eve, Luke 24, the conclusion of the ministry of Jesus on earth. It's a conclusion of the great things that comes from this crucifixion. Today's the somber moment. We end on that somber note, but the next chapter 24, that's it. It's the glory of Christ finally comes. So celebrating Christmas, It's not Nimrod's birthday we're celebrating. So forget about everybody else's, you know, pagan perspective on this December 25th date. I mean, the Western Christian world, we celebrate on the 25th of December, but don't get hung up on the date so much as we're celebrating the birth of Christ. That's the whole purpose. And thank you for listening and thank you for watching. ShawnPGreene.com for the rest of the links of all the things that my whole life is really on that YouTube channel. So, all right. Thank you for listening and watching. Coming right back with the finale. Luke 24.